getting very close to the redemption. It would be fine if it happened during these 3 weeks. We wouldn't have to fast on the 9th of Av, which is a 24-hour plus fast, etc. So the different portions that we've been reading last week's and tomorrow's and the final week following Shabbos all have to do with introspection. Think things over. Think things over. Think what has happened in our past. What caused us to be in the position that we're in now. And how this can all be converted into a holiday. These sad days, the fast days, and what makes us feel actually encouraged is that these days in which we're fasting, including the one that we did recently, the 17th of Tammuz, and the one that will be a week from Saturday night, the 9th of Av, they were holidays when the second temple was built. So it makes it very encouraging to know that we can change. We can change the calendar. We can change the future. Okay, I want to try to at least outline these giant portions and give us some good ideas over here. Okay, the very first section of Matos deals with a very important point that is terribly neglected today. It's about vows. That when a person makes a vow, it's almost like a holy thing that they have declared, in which they have vowed to, for instance, to not use a particular thing. They may vow to fulfill a commandment, which is sometimes a good thing. Let's say they had a terrible time with a particular food, so they made a vow that they're not going to eat that food anymore. It may sound a little bit complicated and a little silly in some respects. People get angry at each other. Somebody makes a vow, I don't have anything to do with you. I don't want you to have any pleasure from me, and I don't have any pleasure from you, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. These are things the Torah does not want. The point I want to bring out with this is that what comes out of a person's mouth, they have to fulfill. And if they break their word, it's a very severe sin. One can make a condition. Usually it's done before Rosh Hashanah. Any vows or obligations that I take upon myself, except commitments to do a commandment to do something good, they should be canceled before I even make them. This is to be saved from transgressing and breaking one's word. That's the point I really want to make right now. The person makes an oath, which is discouraged. Person makes a vow, which is also discouraged. What comes out of a person's mouth, it's almost like holiness, and they have to keep their word. It's a very, very severe sin to not keep one's word. Today, we're living in such a world that very few people keep their word. I said, no, I didn't mean it, etc., etc. I never told you that, etc. Yes, and all kinds of commitments that people make. I'll help you. Of course, I'll help you. Uncle Joe, I'll help you. I'll do this for you, that you. And all of a sudden they do it, but you said you would do it. Forget it. Well, God doesn't forget it. So this is an important point of this very first passage of how important it is to keep one's word. I'll just read from verse 3 just for a moment. This is verse 3 in chapter 30. Each kiydur neder Hashem. A person, in this case, it's a man who makes a vow to God. Bohi shova shvua, or makes a promise.
What verse is
this? This is verse 3 in Hebrew and English. Verse 3, chapter 30. You have the book of Numbers? Are you sure you have the book of Numbers?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, but you said chapter 30, verse 3?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Each kiydur neder Hashem, a man who will make a vow to God, or shova shvua, or make a promise, lesor isur al nafsho, to bind something upon his soul. That could be swearing off milk. It could be something very, almost silly to you and me. It's not silly when a person makes such a vow. Lo yachil devaro. that person making the vow, if it's a man or a woman, shall not profane their word. Going to all that came out of his mouth, he must do. One is commanded by God to keep one's word. And these vows and promises, as I say, they have things that have nothing to do necessarily with Torah itself, with holiness, with the commandments. A person just makes promises, as we were just discussing, either promise to do or not do something, or promise that make a vow that he's going to avoid smoking. Might be a good example, for instance. The person tries to stop smoking, makes a vow not to smoke. That would be a healthy thing and a good thing, but once again, you are not allowed to break your word. It's a very severe sin if one does not keep their word. It is possible when in the presence of a rabbinical court, if someone sees that they really goofed, they really messed up, and they need to be released from their commitment, it is possible to do it. Better not to make the commitment to begin with. So that's the very first chapter, speaking about that, the first section. As I say, this is a gigantic double portion. The next section, which you go on to now, has to do with tying up loose ends. What are the loose ends? In previous portions, we had learned that Bilam, a prophet of the non-Jews, God saw to it that they have a prophet too. He was a legitimate prophet. He was a non-Jewish legitimate prophet who had a very horrible character. And he really hated the Jewish people. There's a whole history behind that too. And he was hired by Balak, the king of Moab, to curse the Jewish people. He knew the precise instant that the Almighty is disgusted with the world. And if you just said one quick word, destroy them, just at that very, very instant, when the Almighty is disgusted every day with the world, that curse would take effect. So he was hired to do this. So God outsmarted him, and God made it sure that he did not get angry at the world all those times that the Bilam tried to curse. So that didn't work. Now, this is interesting. I'm trying to bring out the universal lessons here. So Bilam failed. He's not going to get paid a fortune by the king of Moab. Mm-hmm. And because of his utter hatred of the Jewish people, he comes up with the idea that unfortunately always works against us. And that's what we must focus on with these portions. Those universal teachings that apply all the time. God forbid, God forbid, God forbid, if someone wants to get at the Jewish people. God loves us, he protects us. When we're behaving ourselves, nobody can touch us. The one thing that works is to get the Jewish people to sin. We're our own worst enemy. Getting the Jewish people to sin, upsetting the Almighty, that makes us vulnerable. So Bilam comes up with this great idea to get the Jewish people to sin with the Midianite women, Moabite women, and before they could sin with them, they'd have to bow down to their disgusting, horrible idol. Unfortunately, some of the Jewish people fell prey to the trick. It was a terrible plague, and the great saintly man Pinchas took his life in his hands and ended the plague by killing the prince of Shimon, who was publicly displaying his defiance of Moses and God. And that stopped the plague. Meanwhile, Bilam went to collect his money for killing 24,000 Jewish people. Didn't kill them with his curse, didn't kill them with warfare, he killed them by getting them to sin. So the Almighty wants the Midianites who followed his horrible, immoral advice to be punished. And that's a Milchemes Hashem, a war for the sake of the revenge of the Almighty, that his people were tricked into sinning and tricked into a horrible plague. So that's what's next. That the Almighty wants this loose end to be tied up. So the Almighty wants 1,000 from each tribe to be part of a special army that's going to destroy the Midianites and their kings because of their trickery to hurt the Jewish people. You should know that the country of Midian, we were not, the land of Israel is a good distance from Midian. The Midianites had no need at all to get involved with this. It's just out of utter hate. So the war was conducted and the Midianites were destroyed. And unfortunately, the soldiers made a mistake and they left alive the very women that the Jewish people had sinned with, increasing the great disgrace. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, you're going to have to take care of that first. And in addition to that, the various belongings of the Midianites are unclean, besides the fact that they belong to a non-Jewish nation, and there were many deaths, of course, involved in the fighting of the war. So Moshe Rabbeinu tells them that before you can use their vessels, like for instance their dishes, forks and knives, whatever, if you could use them, they have to have the sprinkling of the ashes of the red heifer to remove the uncleanness, the spiritual uncleanness. You and I discussed spiritual uncleanness with regard to washing the hands in the morning. This is a much more serious uncleanness, which is a result of death. So Moshe Rabbeinu tells them that before you can use these various things, and as a matter of fact, if those remaining of the Midianite people that we were allowed to spare, if they want to join the Jewish people, they also have to be purified, as well with the ashes of the red heifer. Moshe Rabbeinu was very angry at the heads of the army that they had spared the very women who had sinned with the Jewish people. I mean, how do you have the nerve to do that? These are the women that were directly involved in causing the Jewish people to sin, to act disgustingly. If you want to have an idea, the way to bow to their idol was to go to the bathroom in front of it. Unbelievable. Filthiest, most immoral things that these ancient peoples were sunk into. So he got angry. This is another important lesson. He got angry at the heads of the army and ordered them, of course, to annihilate those women who were involved in making the Jewish people sin. There's a general rule. When a person loses their temper, which in itself is like idol worship, it's very wrong to let oneself go. When a person loses their temper, they lose their rationale, they lose their memory. And Moses, as great as he was, and the greatest student, obviously, of the Almighty taught him the whole Torah, he forgot something very interesting. And I'm wondering, and I know that you've been studying Judaism and don't feel shy or embarrassed, but I'm wondering if you can see what he forgot. So I'm going to help you along with it a little bit. There are various vessels, dishes and utensils, pots and pans and things like that were taken from the Midianites when the war against them to take the revenge of the Almighty. These people had tricked the Jewish people into filthy sin, not just a horrible idolatrous sin, filthy sin altogether, absolutely decrepit. And Moses tells them that because of the exposure to the dead bodies, these articles, need to be purified before you can use them for kosher food. So he said they have to be sprinkled with the special waters with the ashes of the red heifer. That he told them about. Isn't there something else that has to be done with these pots and pans and dishes before you can eat kosher food on them? You want to take a guess, Carla?
Sure.
What's that?
Oh, you said what do we need to do with the pots and the pans first?
Before, don't forget these are coming from people who ate non-kosher food. They were exposed to dead bodies, of course, because of the warfare that took place. So Moshe Rabbeinu said to purify the vessels, pots and pans, dishes, whatever, knives, forks, whatever. In order to purify them, they have to be sprinkled with the ashes of the red heifer, and then you could use them. Isn't there something else that's needed that you
I
and
thought
I
we
do?
have to. I thought we have to put it on the mikvah, which is rainwater.
That's true. That is true, and that's actually mentioned in the portion as well. But isn't there something else? What were these dishes and pots and pans used for? Right. We told them that it was very good that you remembered. Even when we buy a brand new pot,
Maybe boil them if
there you go. Good for you. It's called koshering them. They have to be kosher. Moshe Rabbeinu forgot.
Allow boiled water to kill all the germs.
Yeah, it's actually not germs. I should explain that now too. That the law of koshering vessels that were used for non-kosher food is right in the scriptures. It's not rabbinic. It's right in the scriptures, and it depends on how the utensil was used. If the utensil was used with boiling water, then you have to boil it. You have to clean it carefully, boil it after letting it rest for 24 hours. And what's preferable actually is to throw a hot stone into it so that the water boils over the outside of the pot as well. The reason for it is because small amounts of the food that was cooked in that pot or that was used with the dish, small amounts are absorbed into it. And that we're not permitted to eat either. You take a beautiful, wealthy people have these gold dishes, just for instance, a gold dish, right? A gold dinner plate. Imagine such a thing, okay? And they're eating non-kosher food on it. The Jew gets hold of it. It's sold at a yard sale, okay? It was sold at a yard sale, and the Jew wants to use it for Shabbos. Why not? Maybe a whole set of these beautiful, magnificent dishes, etc., etc. The small amounts of the non-kosher food that gets absorbed into the utensil. That's the reason for boiling it or scalding it with hot water, because that causes it to emerge, just to leach out of the vessel. Then you cool it with cold water to close up, because these vessels are actually porous. They have tiny holes in them that you and I can't see, and they absorb the non-kosher food. So Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to tell them, besides purifying them from being exposed to dead bodies, also they need to be koshered like you and I would have to kosher a dish or pot that had non-kosher food in it, or it became trade by somebody made a mistake, mixed up milk and meat like we were talking about this week, etc. too. Moshe Rabbeinu forgot to tell them that. So his nephew, Elazar, who was now the new high priest, respectfully addressed the people and said, in addition to what Moshe told you, you also have to kosher the dishes. That which was used with just boiling water, you can boil. Something that was used on like a barbecue or the oven, you have to use fire. You have to get them white hot, really red hot, white hot, to burn up the non-kosher food that's inside them. Let's see, you have one of these, what's the thing you stick through, you put the meat on when you're going to rotisserie it. Forgot the word for it. Maybe it'll come to me soon. You know that you've seen a rotisserie that it's like a rod and it turns the chicken. You've seen that, okay? So that's used directly with the fire. Spit. I think it's called a spit, by the way. So you can't take that spit and just put it into boiling water because it's used with the fire directly on the food and on the spit. So to kosher that, as I say, this portion has the basic laws of koshering vessels. Pesach time, many people have to kosher what is used during the year, which is kosher, but it's not kosher for Passover, and they have to kosher some of these vessels too. So that's also an important point. But why did I make such a big deal about Moshe Rabbeinu forgetting something? I mean, first of all, he was a super saintly person. We can't even put a description on him. He learned the Torah directly from God. Why am I making such a big deal about the fact that he forgot? We're all human, aren't we? Because there's a reason why he forgot. He forgot the law to tell the people to kosher the vessels because he lost his temper. When a person loses their temper, everything goes kaflooey. It's a very wrong thing. One has to keep in control at all times. Yes, the heads of the army made a terrible mistake. They did. It's true. They did a very wrong thing. But you don't lose your temper over it. You keep under control. You explain to them you did a very wrong thing, and now make good for it. Fix it up. So that's a lesson, another lesson besides the law of koshering, which is right here in the Torah. It's not even a rabbinic law. It's right from the Torah itself. And we do it the same way, just as it says in this portion. The exact same way, and the same laws apply. If there's rust on the thing you want to kosher, you got to scrape off the rust first. That's even mentioned here too. Okay, we're going to go a little bit further. The enormous amount of captives and the enormous amount of animals that the Jewish army took as booty and prey from the enemy are counted, and they have to be divided amongst the army and divided amongst the rest of the people. These are thousands and thousands and thousands, in fact, hundreds of thousands of animals. And each side, the army that did the fighting gets half, and the rest of the Jewish people get half. But from each must be given a donation to the Almighty. They got this stuff for nothing, right? They got this stuff for nothing. The war was the Almighty's war to punish these horrible people who tricked us into sinning and caused many of us to, God forbid, pass away from a terrible plague. So it's up to the Almighty what's done with all the captives and what's done with all the booty. And Hashem gives Moshe Rabbeinu strict instructions. Count how many you have. Give half to the army, half to the rest of the Jewish people, and a donation for the Holy Temple, which you have a portable Holy Temple then, must be given as well. Okay? Then, there's a very strange passage at the end of Matos. It's taken quite a bit of time, but it's very enormous portion.
Which number is
I'll
this?
tell you. Okay. Okay, this starts from chapter 32. You just gaze through it as I read here and there, because I can only take main points from the portion. It's just so much here, an enormous amount of material here. The Jewish people are actually at the threshold of Israel. They're in the hills of Moab. All that is between them and Israel is the Jordan River. So they're getting ready to cross the Jordan River. To get to that point, the two powerful kings, Sichon and Og, of the two nations, Ammon and Moab, they, of course, did not want the Jewish people to go through. So we had a hard time getting through there too. But also, this would be the West Bank. The East Bank. The East Bank of the Jordan, that territory was occupied by these two very powerful kings. They wouldn't let us through. The Almighty told us to fight our way through. And now we're close to the Jordan River, ready to go into Israel. We never intended to take away land on the eastern side of the Jordan. That's where Lebanon is now, just to give you an idea. We never intended to take that land, and quite a bit beyond Lebanon also. But they wouldn't let us through. The Sichon and Og, those two mighty kings, Sichon Melech or Mori or Melech HaBashan, two mighty, very powerful superpower kings. So we had to fight our way. In the meantime, we conquered their land. Likewise, if they should just let us through, we wouldn't even bother them. We're at the threshold of going into the Jordan River, and two of the tribes approached Moshe Rabbeinu, and they say, we have tons and tons of animals. They had more than the other tribes. We have tons and tons of animals. We don't want to cross the Jordan. We want to take these lands that we just conquered because they're great for pasturing animals. Can you imagine Moshe Rabbeinu hearing two tribes of the people after 40 years since they left Egypt don't want to go to Israel? Can you imagine how he felt? He said, you're doing the same thing that the spies did. Like 38 years ago, they discouraged people from going. The people made a rebellion. As a matter of fact, the night that they made the rebellion is the 9th of Av. That's one of the things that went wrong. And they were crying for nothing. How can we go to Israel? After all the miracles God had made for them, how can we go to Israel? Wailing and crying. So God said, you're crying for nothing now. I'll give you a good reason to cry. So they insisted on sending the spies unnecessarily. The spies came back with a bad report to discourage the people from going. A rebellion took place, and the people wandered for the better part of the 40 years in the wilderness. They're now right at the threshold of Israel, ready to cross the Jordan, conquer the first city, Jericho. The whole thing's happening again. We don't make us cross the Jordan. We'll take this thing. Instead of the mainland of Israel, for which we've been longing for, you left Egypt to receive the land of Israel, the holy land of our forefathers. We'll stay right here. There's a lot of pasture land here, and it's good for our money. They put their money first. It's a good investment. Moshe Rabbeinu was very upset with them, and the people, the two tribes, came up to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, tell you what, we'll cross the Jordan with everybody else. We're the best soldiers. We'll cross the Jordan and fight at the head of the army. We'll conquer the land with our brethren. And after the land is conquered, and not only that, after it's divided, it took 7 years just to divide up the land. After it's conquered and after it's divided, we'll cross back the Jordan River and we'll inherit this land that we want on the eastern side of the Jordan. So Moshe Rabbeinu made them promise, which they did, and they kept their promise. In the book of Joshua, they kept their promise, and that was done. So that's another important feature of this double portion. At the beginning of the next section, as I say, I can only touch upon point after point, and it's going to take plenty of time as is. Take a look.
I have a small question.
Go ahead.
You're mentioning here that the people of Israel were sinning because they fell into traps, etc. We already saw the destruction of the first, the second temple. But from your point of view, seeing the people of Israel always making mistakes.
Yes.
And I just wanted to know your thoughts in regards to this situation and other situations and even thinking about the third temple. I think it's definitely going to take a miracle because the world's getting darker and darker and darker.
Right, that is the prediction. The chart so predicts that before, in fact, how does creation begin? Vahi erev, vahi boker. Night came first, and there was evening, and there was morning. And the creation of the world is like a pattern for the history of humanity, that from great darkness comes the greatest and greater light. And the Almighty knows in advance that we have these failings, and it means a great deal to Him that when people have failed miserably, incredibly, that they pick themselves up by their bootstraps, they realize their mistake, and they try to turn over their lives completely. And even though some in this lifetime don't correct their ways, the Almighty gives them a chance to come back here again and to be able to face the same challenges. And that's why God created man the way he did. He knows he could have created man angelically. In fact, angels came down. This is interesting. Angels came down. They said, we'll do better than humans. We'll do better than humans. They were far worse than the humans. And they actually had children, and the children were giants, etc., who wreaked horrible havoc in the world. So angels normally don't have an evil inclination, but you put them into a body, into a human body, which has lots and lots of temptations.
Sorry, I didn't realize.
Sorry, that's okay. Sorry. I looked better before.
I know, but
Okay. So we are not to be discouraged by this, but we realize, thank God that we personally realize that the Almighty is watching for those few. The Jewish people is the fewest of the nations, watching for those few who will fight to do the right thing, who will not let the darkness overcome them and the foolishness of everybody around them doing the wrong thing. Again, starting from our forefather Abraham, imagine being all alone in the world with everybody committing all kinds of horrible things. He goes around. There were some other saintly people, by the way, but they didn't go public. Abraham went public, and he almost lost his life many times trying to go public. Didn't let it discourage him, kept on fighting, and in the end, it is so inspiring to see that the Canaanites called him Nasi Elohim. You're a prince of God. We abused you. We tried to kill you. We tried to get rid of you. You spoiled our political system where a human being declares himself as a false god. Nothing new. Nothing new. We spoke about it, Christianity. Nothing new at all. A great trick. A great technique to get people, if you can see me, pull them by the nose like that. Very good technique. Great technique. He did not let this discourage him his whole life. That's what amazes me. You know, you keep beating your head on the stone. You start to get bleeding. No, he did not let anything discourage him all the way through. He knew he was doing the right thing, and he knew the Almighty was enjoying every second of his doing it. So that's what you and I have to do. Like Reverend St. Yiska says, we have to take over from Abraham and Sarah. That's exactly what we have to do.
We're taking up where they
Not
left
only
off.
with Jewish people, but with all people, with all nations. You and I studied not long ago. We were working on the 7 Noahide commandments that really go back to Adam, the Adamite commandments. They're called Noahide commandments because the world was destroyed and then repopulated by Noah. Everyone is a grandchild of Noah now, of course. So they're called Noahide commandments. All right, let's get back to the portion a little bit. Just a few more minutes.
We're going to touch
This
on
is
the
the
hot
second
Torah a little
portion.
bit?
Yeah, I did already actually. I mentioned that there's 3 Haftorahs that speak about the prediction of the destruction. So I did mention that already. The second one is going to be on Shabbos, even though it's Rosh Chodesh too.
In the Good Chumash, they say that the same reading of the Rosh Chodesh is the same as the double portion that we read the regular.
It's in the same book. Yeah, it's in the same book. Yeah. Well, actually, in the Chabad calendar, it says not to do that. In the Chabad calendar, it says to read the Haftorah for the 3 weeks. I looked it up in the Chabad calendar.
Yeah, but here it says.
Sometimes there's a difference of opinion, but in the Chabad calendar, it says to do the from the 3 weeks. If you want, I'll double check in a moment.
No, I'm going to read what
on Maaseh, I believe that there are opinions that hold that
way. This is read even if Rosh Chodesh occurs on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Jeremiah chapter 2 verses 4 through 28.
That's it.
2 chapter 4 verses 1.
It's telling you not to read the Rosh Chodesh Haftorah, but to read the Torah from the 3 weeks, which is the book of Jeremiah. That's exactly what he's saying over there, actually.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. The second portion, which is chapter 33, I'm sorry. Chapter 33 lists, I'll give you a chance to find the place there. I just want you to look at the first verse. Can you find chapter 33 in your Chumash column?
Yeah.
Got it. Good. Okay. This actually lists the 42 stops that the Jewish people made from the moment they left Egypt to the point at which they were ready to cross the Jordan. So the verse goes like this: Elamase b'nei Yisrael. These are the journeys of the children of Israel. Asher yotzu mi'eretz Mitzrayim, that they left the land of Egypt at some according to their hosts, with the many, actually millions, there were actually millions that left. Yad Moshe v'Aaron, in the hand of Moshe and Aaron. Vayech told Moshe es Moseihem. This is verse 2. And Moshe wrote, their goings out lamasehem, to their journeys al pi Hashem. God wanted all the stops to be recorded. If some of those stops were great, we received the Torah. If one of those stops, we were saved from the Egyptians, walked through the sea. And many of the stops, unfortunately, we rebelled, we fetched, we complained. We don't have water, we don't have bread, we don't have meat, we don't have fish, we don't have all these nice things, etc. So the Almighty wants the Torah to recount all the trips that we made, all these sub-trips that we made, all the stops that we made, that we should realize something very beautiful. You and I also take 42 journeys in the course of a lifetime. 42 journeys. Some stops are really great, the birthday parties. Some stops are not so great. We got into trouble at school. We had trouble with our children. All these things have a goal. Just as the Jewish people left Egypt, they left slavery, they made mistakes, they caused themselves to be in the wilderness for 40 years. It's all a progressive journey towards Israel. And that's what our lives are as well. We have our 42 journeys. Sometimes we move about. Rebbetzin and I never expected to wind up in Dickinson. It's one of these 42 journeys in there of our lifetime. And we're here to do good things too. That's what we're here for. One of those 42 journeys. We never expected to wind up here. We wouldn't expect to wind up on the North or South Pole either, but we wound up in Dickinson.
And how we would have ever met that I'm in Dickinson and you're in Baltimore. You know?
Many miracles.
There's no distance in prayer. You know?
I would have never thought to be in this type of stuff.
And then after that, Hashem sends you that you're in the very place where my husband came from in order to even do that part of it. You know what I'm saying? That it was one miracle after the other, not just one.
Better question.
Yeah, Amen.
Skipping to chapter 34, just quickly, after the journeys have been reviewed.
Oh, I have a small question in those stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Is it true that there were some places where the people obviously had to die and they had to bury them, and and there was no more space, and then they had to bury on top of the bodies of people.
Heroes, Heroes on top of what you call the graves of lust. That there was a point at which the people were very rebellious and disrespectful to the Almighty, and they had to be buried where they were. Unfortunately, under some circumstances throughout history, they've had to sometimes bury one on top of. There's been situations like that, most unfortunately. In chapter 34, the Almighty says again.
Sorry to interrupt again. But the person, so you're saying that when people died, they didn't die for natural causes, but they died because of sin.
It's always because of utter disrespect to the Almighty. Utter disrespect. You see, the Almighty is doing all kinds of amazing miracles. He's changing nature for you. You complain to him, I haven't got this, I haven't got that. All you have to do is say, please, Hashem, is what Rebbe Yitzchak always tells us to do. Please Hashem, we don't have bread. We ran out of the bread, the matzah. We ran out of the matzah that we brought with us from Egypt. So instead of complaining, who's going to give us meat? Who's going to give us this? Etc. Etc. Just pray. That's Hashem. Or just go to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, you're a leader. You're a king. Please ask the Almighty to provide us with these. No, we're a bunch of kvetches. We're a bunch of kvetches and complainers and criticizers. Would you take us? This is what he said. Would you take us out of Egypt for? We did better over there. Can man incredible ingratitude, unbelievable ingratitude. After all that's been done for them, backbreaking work was fun for you. They had to eat matzah in Egypt too, by the way.
That reminds
because
me
the
of
reason
the
for eating
people.
matzah in Egypt wasn't the commandment from God. Is because if you have prisoners or slaves, that's economically, it's good economically because when you eat this heavy food, it stays in your stomach longer, so you don't have to feed them as much. I mean, that's one of the explanations why you have matzah with the seder. At any rate, it's always because of utter disrespect and complaining and saying we wish we never left. I can imagine such a thing. Our kids do things, when you're raising your kids, they'll be disrespectful and forth like that sometimes. They'll be super ungrateful.
What about the people in the United States that are not happy for the freedom and all the stuff? They didn't even want to fly flags
freedom,
on the...
Plenty of food, furniture, a house, central heating, central lighting, the things that you and I take for granted. You know better than us because you come from Bolivia. Hot water, a bathroom in your house, a bathroom, not to have to go into the backyard and go to the bathroom. We don't know how rich we are.
Or go to the patio.
Yeah.
At least be grateful,
Of course, 100%. Anyways, I have to get going on here. So the Almighty warns the people again. You're going to cross another body of water. You're going to be crossing through the Jordan. God is going to make another miracle, which is in the book of Joshua. And the water, instead of splitting, it's a river. So it piled up like this. You can see my hand. It piled up like into the sky. And, of course, what happens when you cut off a river? The part of the river that wasn't cut off flows out, and you're left with dry land to walk on. So it was different. So the Almighty is saying, when you go over, have in mind, you have to utterly and completely get rid of the idolatry in Israel. Otherwise, you don't deserve to go there either. You're no better than them. So he warned them, as you're going to cross the Jordan, you're going to be walking on the floor of the riverbed. I think they call it a riverbed. You're going to be walking on the riverbed. You have this in mind, that those nations that insist on being sinful, you're going to clean them out and get rid of the idolatry. And if you don't, they will be boss over you. And that's what's happening in Israel right now, too. Throughout the ages. Throughout the ages. Not only are we surrounded by Arabs, but there are Arabs in Israel who won't let us go to our even holy places. To our holy places in our land. Same thing again.
I've seen it.
Yeah, you saw it. You're on. Many Israelis, Chiloni. Chiloni means secular. We don't want anything to do with God, nothing to do with religion. The Mashiach has his hands full, but he's going to know how to handle it. The next passage you'll find interesting.
Let me point out one thing.
Yeah.
If a person does sins living on the land of Israel, they're double dutied. In other words, they're double as bad as if they did the same sins living in the U.S. or a different country. Because defying God on his own land, on our own land, is umpteen times worse. It's written. It's not my opinion.
Right? It says that the land of Israel vomits. Like when you give someone from a royal family, you give them something disgusting. They're used to eating royal foods, the most delicious gourmet delights that anyone could imagine. You give them something spoiled, they'll vomit it. That's Israel is holy, and it cannot stomach, literally cannot stomach sinfulness in it. That's why there's always, all through the centuries, all this, unfortunately, warfare and violence. I do want to tell you, because I do have to finish up, there's something extremely, extremely vital today, especially, that's in the second portion in Matthew, and this is in chapter 34. What actually is the land of Israel? Where are its boundaries? Where does it begin? Where does it end? Who decided that? Is it warfare? We just marched in and took whatever we feel like? In this second portion, Maseh, the Almighty gives us the exact boundaries of the land of Israel. Where the north is, where the south is, where the east is, and the west, of course, is the Mediterranean. And included in the Mediterranean, there's some islands there. They're part of Israel too. Go to Israel today. You can't go here. You can't go there. This is dangerous. This is occupied. Right? That's why we need the Mashiach. Had we behaved ourselves and done what God said to do before we even got in there, He warned us, go over there, clean out these people who are too far gone. I want you to know, Joshua did three things. He gave them three chances, the nations that were occupying Israel. It was our land originally, by the way, too. You want to hear the three things? He wrote him a letter. He wrote him a letter. He said, if you want, you don't have to leave. You don't have to get killed. You can stay where you are, as long as you keep the 7 Noahide commandments. You don't have to be Jews. We don't force convert. We don't do that. The Torah doesn't want that at all. That kind of conversion is worthless. Somebody really wants to convert. They really want to become a Jew or Jewess. Then you have to help them. We don't go around proselytizing, as it's called in English. So he sent them a letter and told them, if you keep the Noahide commandments, you can stay. That's called a Ger Toshav, a Noahide citizen of Israel. And God is even favoring them. He even favors them. If they don't forget, these were the most depraved people. They sacrificed their children to their false gods. They married their animals and their relatives. Filth, 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 filth. They were given a chance. If you keep the 7 Noahide commandments, you can stay. No one's going to hurt you. Option number 2. You could leave. If you want to continue your horrible way of life, you can leave. Again, we won't bother you. And the third option, warfare. If you insist on staying and you insist on continuing your filthy, immoral way of life that you have done, then we're going to fight you and destroy you. So there was
I'm sorry, can you repeat the number? Do you mind?
I'll go through all three.
Yeah. I got a phone call.
Yeah.
I didn't hear.
Yeah. Number one, you can stay, and all you have to do is keep the 7 Noahide commandments, which were given centuries before. They're not new. This goes back to the time of Noah. Keep the 7 Noahide commandments. Don't worship idols. Don't commit adultery. Don't kill. Establish law courts. Don't steal. The 7 commandments that we went through. That's option number 1. Nobody gets hurt. You can stay where you are. Option number 2. If you really insist on keeping up your filthy, immoral way of life, you can leave. And no one will bother you. By the way, one of the 7 nations took up that option, the Girgashi. They picked up and left. We'd rather stay as horrible idolaters. So they picked up and left. But the others stayed. And option number 3 is to fight. And then we tell you and warn you we're going to destroy you. The Almighty's on our side. And you're living a filthy way in the Holy Land. And therefore, you got to go. Either improve or leave, or you're going to have to be destroyed. So The official borders of the land of Israel are in this portion right over here. I'll just go quickly the last couple of points. The Levites, of course, officiate in the Holy Temple. They were given certain cities to live in. They're not given a whole state. When Mashiach comes, they will. The other tribes, like we have the United States, you got Maryland, you got Wisconsin, you got Massachusetts, right? Each state has its own governor, right? It has its own governor and its people, and it's part, of course, of the United States of America. So Israel is also a United States for the Almighty as well. So the Levites, they officiate in the Holy Temple, and they were given cities to live in, with a park around the city if they had fields and animals as well. Towards the end of the portion is a law about a very sad circumstance that does occur in life, in which a person killed someone else inadvertently. They did not mean to kill them. The classic case is that they were chopping wood in the forest, and the metal of the axe slipped off of the handle and struck a person nearby and killed them. It's an accidental death. Even though it's accidental, there's a reason that this person had such a terrible calamity happen to them. The person was killed for a reason that God knows. And the person who killed them inadvertently, did not intend to do it, also has something on his record or her record causing that they should have to be guilty of this. The law is that one who killed someone else inadvertently has to go into exile and live in one of the cities of refuge. One of the cities of refuge in which they have to spend their days there till the high priest passes away. It's called Golus, or exile. I think Rebbetzin Yiska and I could explain what exile is. We have no synagogue here. It's very hard to find a Jew here, or Jewish here. We have to look hard to find the kosher food here. We have to import the kosher meat and kosher chicken from far away and then spend a fortune to get it. When we see another fellow Jew or Jewish, we're so overjoyed because we feel so much alone. That's exile. The person who killed someone else inadvertently, they had their own piece of land in Israel. They had their home. They had their family. This calamity that befell them is not an accident. There are no accidents.
That's right.
There are, we call it manslaughter. In this country, actually, it's called manslaughter. But there are conditions with regard to it. For instance, it's only if it's with a downward motion that caused the death. It's accidental, but it's only with a downward motion that the person has to go into exile and spend their days away from their home, away from their family. They have to live in one of these cities of refuge. So everything is really, it's for a reason. There's no accidents, no coincidence. I think Rebbetzin Yiska invented the expression a God incident. Everything is a God incident. It's an incident that only could was the Almighty. The portion ends actually with a wedding. This is the second portion, which I'll speak about briefly.
Ein od milvado.
There was a man named Slofchad. There's a whole story behind him also, who had no sons. He only had daughters.
What verse is this?
This is at the very end of the portion. There's so much to talk about here that I skipped also,
so
but
we're on
I'm doing the
36.
best I can. I'll show you where it is. Yeah. I'll show you where it is. The
I
very
have a
end.
small question about exile.
Yeah.
So, and also, how about people that fight in wars and they have to actually, obviously fight with the enemy? How did that in that time? Like those people were also in exile.
No.
If-
What do you mean? They killed the enemy? You mean?
Yes.
No. If the Jewish people have to fight a war, it has to be something the Almighty approves of, according to the Torah, and it's especially for self-defense, like we have to now. Someone who murders purposely, of course, is born before. If they're born before, they're put to death. Someone who murders on purpose is put to death. There are very strict laws about that. They're in this portion as well. But there's a large section there about a person who killed someone else inadvertently. And the lesson behind that is that everything is under the control of God. They weren't enemies. He wasn't that person's enemy. They didn't mean to do it. But there's no coincidences. It's all God incidents. And this calamity occurred to that person because they have something else on their record. There was already something else on their record. The portion ends, because it's getting late, and Rabbi Ziniski has to continue to. In chapter
No, I don't. You can
36,
do it all
just
if
to
you
end
want.
up, chapter 36,
You can do the
this
whole
actually
thing.
it
I
ends
don't
with
know.
actually a wedding. And I'm glad that it ends with a wedding, because as you see, there's a number of what we call difficult passages that we went through there, etc. So Slavkot had only daughters and no sons. And these daughters, like the other Jewish women, loved the land of Israel. The Jewish women did not die out in the wilderness of the 40 years. The men said, we want to elect a new leader and go back to Egypt. They would say, go ahead, go. We're going to Israel. I'm not kidding. Go ahead, you go. If that's what you want, you go ahead and go. So that's why they're stuck in the wilderness for 40 years.
And the women did
rich.
not give gold for the golden
They
calf
didn't
either.
participate in the golden calf either. That is correct. Absolutely.
And it says that by the women that we came out of Egypt, and it's also written that by the women the final redemption will come in.
That's right.
Baruch
That is right.
Hashem.
So the daughters of Slavkot approached Moses. They approached Moshe Rabbeinu, and they said that our father had no sons, and we feel that we should be in place of the sons, since he did not have any, and we want to have a portion in the Holy Land of Israel, because they loved the land, the Holy Land of Israel, like the other Jewish women did, and they were exceptional. They were very saintly women. But Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know what to say, and God said, if a person does not have sons, and they only have daughters, there's a whole chain of inheritance, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But in the portion, it mentions that if there are no sons, the daughters do inherit. They do get a portion. So at the very end of the Sefer, we'll just end off with this. At the very end of Maseh, so the tribes were concerned that if these girls marry out of their tribe, they were from Menashe, they marry out of their tribe, and unfortunately pass away, their land that they were giving could go to their husband, will go to their husband. And therefore, the land that they will be given will go to another tribe other than Menashe. So they're concerned that we're going to, right away, if these girls marry out of their tribe, which is perfectly permissible, it could result that we'll lose our land before we even get it. It's possible. So Moshe, of course, answered them with God's instructions that just for this generation, it can still happen, by the way, it could happen, but for this generation, they should marry within their tribe, which they did. And they married their cousins, and the portion ends actually with a nice upbeat, a nice up note with a 5 weddings. So it's very, very nice how it ends. Okay, that's a very brief overview.
I'm so sorry. It said 5 weddings? That's a lot of
Yeah,
weddings.
because they each got married, right? They each got married, and their names were Machla, Tirzah, Chagla, Milcah, and Noah. Beautiful Hebrew names. Machla is still here
And
today.
what are they?
They were from the tribe of Menashe. Yeah. They were from the tribe, right? And they married within their tribe, which of course gave them a great selection of husbands. But instead of marrying out of their tribe, they stayed within their tribe.
Also, that's on verse 11 and 12.
Right. So that's the very end. It's the very end of the portion. It's
Yeah, I
verse
can
11.
see
Oh, you
it.
found it. Good for you. Good. You're fast. You're ahead of me too. Okay.
No, I just bumped into it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
This
You're
is
very, very
wonderful,
welcome.
wonderful, wonderful.
I'm
I have
very
a lot
glad.
of questions,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you
You
little
can
by little, I'll
you can
get
write them down.
answers.
Write them down, and the three of us are learning together from time to time. So we'll do that. Yeah.
It's never too late.
Okay, Ripson.
This is a very profound story, and it's a lot to cover. So this is
It is.
a great short synopsis version of everything.
That's we tried to do. The second Torah reading will be the additional sacrifices for Shabbos and for Rosh Chodesh. So there'll be two Torah scrolls taken. Not hope you go to Rabbi Zirkin. I wish we could go to Rabbi Zirkin too.
Right?
Well, how much we wish, believe me. And I think he now has two Torah scrolls. Otherwise, you roll the first scroll after finishing the first huge reading, then you have a short Rosh Chodesh reading. Okay, time
We're
to.
sustaining.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
We're making a home for Hashem in this world, husband. That
Baruch Hashem, that's your
every
job.
corner of this
Do it
world
for
has to
Simcha.
have Torah.
Should I leave the phone there? I don't know if it's functioning or not.
Well, mine is over there. And do you have the volume off or something, the noise? Because I want to ask, is anybody there? Ask them. If no one's there, then we'll just go ahead and
Is
hang it
anyone
up.
on the line? Anyone on the conference call line?
Give me 1 second to go get my phone. I put it in the other room so it wouldn't echo.
I wish you a wonderful Shabbos too, Carla. Very proud of you.
Thank you.
And you-
Thank you.
you-
Thank you. Have a great Shabbos. And a
Just me,
wonderful,
your
wonderful
husband.
time before fasting.
Okay.
My
All right.
husband sounds different on the phone.
Who's on the phone?
I said, you sound different on the
Oh,
phone.
sound different on the phone. Yeah. Okay.
No.
All right.
Oh, there you go. That had no purpose, right? Can you switch the or
Yes, I
not?
can. I can. That's for sure.
And I could do this one.
Switch.
I'm not gonna keep you up all night. We've already gone an hour. So let's see if we do like another 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I'll let you sleep. Yeah?
Actually, I'm gonna be cooking because I want to cook right now. And I got actually chicken from my sister.
Oh, nice.
And so I'm really looking forward to cooking a little bit. It's such a big chicken. I
Wow.
want to put little legs in them for soup.
I'll tell you what you can do. Make the whole chicken, make a big soup, and then put it into plastic containers and freeze it in portions. That way, the next time you have,
Like the whole chicken's never gonna be on a pot, not even a big one. So,
wow. So you gotta ask them.
It's a blessing, but I always have.
Yeah. Or
More
cut
than
it.
enough.
Yeah, cut it up in pieces and use whatever you can. Make yourself soup for a couple of weeks. So
Oh no, I know. I'm in it, and I have even after this, after the 9th of Av, I even have some form for cooking. So
there you go. Yeah, because you can. What I do is I make extra portions, and then I put them in separate portions. So I pop it in the microwave, and we have a meal there ready. So that way we're running around, we're doing this, we're teaching that, and when people have to eat around here, it's a quick, you know.
yes,
Plus,
I'm very grateful.
yeah, no, there's a lot to. Just knowing Hashem and Torah is enough to be grateful for. Everything else is extra, you know. I wanted to go through the Goodnik Chumash with you a little bit. the little brown guy, or you have a whole volume all in one. I'm not sure,
I
but
have the big one, I think, here.
oh, you have the big one. Okay, so you're going to the Book of Numbers. We won't have the same page numbers, but if you look up this week's parsha, which is Masei, Masei, which is the last two parshas of the Book of Numbers. So look up in the glove compartment, no, in the table of contents. Uh, look up the Book of Numbers, and then it should give you the list of parshas. You see it?
Yeah, yes, I was just reviewing with Rabbi from chapter 30 to 36, so that's where we
Oh, but you
went.
were in Goodnick, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, good. All right. So what I wanted you to see is at the end of the parsha, first of all. I can't give you a page number because it's a different book. I may have that one, but I'm not sure. Mine is old as the hills. I'm not sure if the old one and the new one are the same. And I don't want to waste time now because you need to sleep. And you should get up very early in the morning.
No, I'm going to be cooking her.
You shouldn't do it that way. It's not good to get into the habit of being up late and sleeping late. Or staying up late and getting up early and then cheating your body of the rest it needs to repair and restore and all that stuff. Anyway, that's my opinion. You can do what you
The
want
problem
to.
is that, no, it's just, the problem is that it gets really hot during the day, and I'm not going to prepare anything hot tonight because it's cooler. But everything else, I should be able to get it by tomorrow.
Buy yourself a fan
Just
for the
because
kitchen. I have these box fans, and they cool off the whole room. Because
okay, I do have it. I have one. I just make it work.
yeah, because in Puerto Rico it was too expensive to run air condition all the time. So we used to live with fans, and then at night when we're going to sleep, we put the air conditioner. So that's why I learned.
The same thing happened to me when I was in Haiti. Actually, I had to sleep with fans also because the AC was way.
Bien caro. So you live and learn, as they say. But anyway, I wanted to show you a few things. First of all, if you go to the last page of the first of the two parshas, the last little writing there before it says, be strong, and may you be strengthened. Not before, I think it's after. Let me look. I need 4 eyes. Yeah. Underneath that, it says, the half Torah for Masei and Matos Masei is on page, and it'll tell you the page number for the half Torah. So write it down on a little scratch paper you have nearby, the page number, and turn the page to the last page after that, which,
And be strong, is Chazak, right?
yeah, chazak v'nis chazek.
Yeah.
But at the end of both of these parshas, when the parsha ends, on the following page you'll see it says Parsha Masei contains 2 positive mitzvahs and 4 prohibitions. See if you find that page.
1062.
I don't know because you and me have different page numbers. Huh?
What did you say again?
Okay, where you found be strong,
Yes.
turn the page and look on the back of that page and see if you don't see Parsha Masei contains 2 positive mitzvahs and 4 prohibitions. Do you see that?
No, I know it says half for Mansai and Mansai on page 1465.
Yeah, the half Torahs are on the other
side.
right, but that's on that page. But if you turn the page,
I see a map in the next page.
oh yeah, okay, so it's not the same. So you might want to write.
Yeah, it's and then I'm going to the line after that. So
Okay, so in my little one over here, it states.
oh
Yeah, I bought. I got it from Amazon actually. Um, I think I got it from Amazon. Um, they had the separate individual volumes, and I got the little ones, and they were like 20 bucks, and were not expensive. But it's easier for me to handle them like this than that big monster book, you know? Yeah, and I gotta go. I have a monster. I gotta check mine with yours. Yeah, I gotta check yours with mine to see if those are the same page numbers. But if you want to jot this down, so it says, let me see if I find it.
But if you tell me the chapter, and the numbers, I can look it up.
Chapter Matos. That's Masse. Matos. Matos. Here we go. There's one positive mitzvah and one prohibition at the end of Matos. And that is the law of annulling a vow, which is chapter 30, verse 3, and not to break a vow, which is chapter 30, verse 3 also. So those are the two mitzvot commanded in that particular parsha. Then at the end of Maseh, I have that. It has it in my little guide. It tells me what's the positive and the negative of each. Here it is. Of Maseh contains 2 positive mitzvahs and 4 prohibitions. To provide cities for the Levites, which also act as cities of refuge, which is chapter 35, verse 2. Not to execute a guilty person before he is tried, chapter 35, verse 12. To compel an unintentional murder to go to the city of refuge, chapter 35, verse 25. A witness in a capital case should not judge it, chapter 35, verse 30. Not to take a redemption fee to save a murderer from the death penalty, chapter 35, verse 31. And last but not least, not to take a redemption fee to free a person from being exiled to a city of refuge. Chapter 35, verse 32. So, those are what's written that you don't have written in yours.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I don't know, maybe I should ask it. Um, when there was a separation between Judah and Israel, and even if you didn't say, we still have many tribes, there are different places all over the world, all them four corners of the world. But we don't even know who they are, but
Those are the 10 lost tribes.
the lost tribes. But they, their laws in regards to even fighting, my question is, what happens when a tribe within Israel fights with another tribe? And is that considered, punishment when they're just fighting with each other? They're not fighting with the enemy.
I'm not the authority on laws, but I can tell you, maybe my husband could answer
It's just
that
a
one.
question.
But if you want my answer on that, my answer would be that there are even laws about fighting and stuff. If there's a disagreement between two parties, they go to what's called a Beis Din, which is a panel of 3 rabbis that are not just general public rabbis. They are considered ravs. They are authorized by their studies to make judgments, or we would call it a shaila sometimes. If a person would need a specific, the law says this, but this happened, and so what's the final judgment on that? Uh, the light example is, and that one we know the answer already. If a person was picking up their kid from school on Friday, they got stuck far from their home, the car broke down, and they got home, but they got home late. Should they light candles or not? So it's a mitzvah to light candles, but it's also a commandment not to light fire on Shabbos. So you have like a pro and a con at the same time. So what could a person do at that point? And that's what decisional rabbis are for, to give you the final results of the question. I asked my mentor, and she told me, and I already knew it, I didn't light candles that night. And I was told a confirmation on that if you got home late, you don't light the candles. So I believe that my personal opinion on this is that if there would be any discrepancy between 2 tribes, or between two people that are from different tribes, or anything like that, they would get a decision from a rabbinical council. They wouldn't fight it out. But let's see what my husband has to say on that one. Husby,
Yeah.
we need your help for a minute.
Oh my goodness, I don't want to bother you.
It's not a bother, sweetheart. This is all serving Hashem. You're giving us the opportunity, and to make great mitzvahs. I appreciate the opportunity. Okay, husband. She said, let me do this without falling over here. She said, what if one tribe was fighting with another tribe? So, I don't remember.
One person from one tribe fighting with another tribe, within Israel, is there any type of organization to be able to find, I guess, an agreement?
Yeah, it's a very terrible thing when one tribe. It did happen, unfortunately, a number of times throughout Jewish history when we even had the land of Israel. And there's no question that the leader of the generation, hopefully, or leaders of the generation, should do their utmost to make peace and resolve the difficulty. This unfortunately did occur, and there were occasions in which a tribe was responsible for some heinous crimes, for some terrible, terrible crimes, and they refused to prove themselves. There was a big war against that tribe. He almost annihilated that one tribe. But thank God they were able to rescue the remnants of that tribe. But there's no question that this is exactly the opposite of what the Almighty wants. And every effort has to be made, should be made, to see to it that the tribes make peace with each other. And all the tribes can intermarry, by the way. They can all intermarry. To determine the tribe of the child, it goes by the father. If the mother's Jewish, that determines that the child is Jewish. When it comes to 2 Jewish parents, that the tribe of the father determines the tribe of the children. And you're very right that every effort has to be made to make peace. Unfortunately, there was the whole kingdom split. The whole kingdom split after King Solomon, in which there was a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom, and they often fought with each other. Unfortunately. That's for another time.
Yeah. Reason? Was it for land?
It wasn't for land. It wasn't for land. It was politics. It actually was politics. It wasn't for land at all. And as a result, there was a tremendous. Solomon was a tough king. He was very, in his own way, he was very great. He was also very tough on the people. And because of previous mistakes of the Jewish people, and even things that have to do with King David, after Solomon passed away, his son Rehoboam was ill-advised by young people to be even tougher than his father was on the people. Tougher taxes, tougher labor, yeah. So what happens is that 10 of the tribes just picked up and left and said, if that's where it's going to be, we're not going to be under you. So what was left was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi were left in the southern kingdom where the Holy Temple was, and the northern kingdom had a separate king. They had a separate king. So,
and those are the ones that did a disappearing act.
The 10 tribes were very, very sinful. Eventually, the southern tribes were sinful too. They often fought with each other. They very often fought with each other. When there isn't unity, unfortunately, then there's warfare. This is a big topic, but you're 100% right that it's very tragic when even one tribe is at odds with another, and certainly when the whole kingdom is split like that. So that's in the prophecies of the prophets that we're studying with Rebbe and Yiska, that the future is going to be, we'll all be reunited as one once again. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I wanted to encourage you to read the Haftorah this week. And, many times I've spoke about the issues of idolatry. And I always refer to Jeremiah chapter 2 because that whole chapter is pointing to idolatry that was done by and through the Jewish people, which caused such a havoc on us because of, from what that chapter shows me, is that I think there's very little that upsets the Almighty more than idolatry. And that there is a big difference between ignorance and intention. And knowing that idolatry is addictive, even if one person knew that it was wrong and wanted to come out and tried to help the other person, if that person had a serious addiction, it would be only the power of Almighty God and His divine guidance and inspiration on a person could bring them out. I've seen various times when people did come out. Most people that grew up from Spanish heritage. I was telling my husband recently that from all that I've learned in the years I spent in Puerto Rico, and they have impeccable demographic records, that 90% of the people in Puerto Rico that have Spanish descent are lost Jews. And that's not just Puerto Rico, because those people, along with the people that filled South America and most of the Latin American countries, even the Dominican Republic, came from there. And they went through horrific nightmares. A lot, if not all, abandoned their faith and their religion and everything to stay alive. And so what goes on is that now people are realizing what they are and finding their way back. It's amazing that there's a guy that I've been talking to who works in Walmart in the entrance all the time, like welcoming the people to come in. And I told him from a long time ago that he probably has Jewish descent. And he's not Spanish speaking. his ancestors came from Czechoslovakia. Okay,
Oh.
and he told me today, I saw him there, and he told me today that his grandfather had everybody promise that they wouldn't even go looking for their ancestral roots until after he passed away. That's how frightened him and his ancestors were to wait until he passed on for them to even know. Okay? So the fright and the panic and the awful things that these people went through uh, was unbearable stuff. And I thank Hashem that He equipped me and in order to be able to help, you know. And I've seen more than 50 people already return back to Judaism just through my life. I can imagine how many millions and thousands there are in the world right now. What were you going to say?
I wanted to say two things.
Mhm.
One is that there are many people that are miseducated pretty much in regards to the Jewish people and Jewish culture and everything, and
This is
they
true.
are
That's true.
and they have already this anti-Semitism embedded in them, even through education, especially mostly Catholic private schools. Um, you know, they train children to not like Jewish people, even though they read the Bible and they don't allow them to read the Old Testament or
Right,
even the New
because
Testament.
they want to. First of all, for anyone listening who is in the realms of New Testament, let me tell you that you do not need the blood of another human being to be redeemed of your sins. All you need is to, with a serious, heartfelt prayer unto the Almighty, saying that you're sorry for whatever sins you've committed and asking for Him to divinely guide you as to what you need to do, being that you're a Jew or not a Jew. Uh, Whatever the person was created to be in this world by God, there is the righteous and the unrighteous in all uh, categories. So the challenge of all of creation is to find out who and what a person is and to learn how to be a righteous person according to how God created them. And the Torah is true. It's been true since the beginning of time. The New Testament and the canon of the New Testament and the early church fathers who also hated Jewish people. In fact, they wrote the book of Revelation so that people would hate Jews as well, calling them the Antichrist, which is a total lie from the pit of hell. That just because we know the truth, that they've tried to make it like that. There is no man who is God. The Torah itself says in the scriptures, Numbers 23:19, God is not a man that he would lie, nor the son of man that he would relent. And he doesn't change his mind. And the things that were written in the original Bible are still as current and true today as ever. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He does not change. A man needs to come to the truth. I believe this plague that's going on in the world around us and all the craziness going on in the governments and everything are going on because man is doing idolatry and God is getting tired of that. Did you have a hand up? You have so much glare behind you. I couldn't see if you were waving or.
Sorry, it's like um I found Jeremiah 2. Is there a specific verse that you wanted to point out?
Okay, so you have what the Haftorah is, and it goes through chapter 2, I believe, mostly. I started to read it. I was going to go over it tonight, but and we could still do it maybe Sunday night class, you know? It doesn't have to be right now. But read through the Haftorahs, because there are the one for Rosh Chodesh, there's the one for Masai, and one for Matos. So there's
Right, you were mentioning something about Jeremiah's number 2.
Let me
But
look.
I don't know what verse. I think
I'm gonna give
verse
it
1.
I'm gonna give it to you right now. I have it marked. Okay. In my Goodnick Chumash, it has the Haftorahs in the back, yeah? And the Haftorah for Masei, Masei, it says, and Matos and Masei, dash Masei, Jeremiah chapter 2, 4 through 28, verses 4 through 28, and it goes chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. If you can, I would read from Jeremiah 1:1 through to 4:2. Go straight through, don't jump over. And just read all of those. And that way, when we get back together, I'll go over it with you. So if you turn the page, in the Goodnick Chumash in the back there, so it says Maftir Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, which is Numbers chapter 28, verses 9 through 15, which usually talks about the different sacrifices of that day. Remember, if we read them, it's as if they were done, the offerings. And then it says Haftorah Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. So under there it says Isaiah 66, 1 through 24. And that's another place that is mega prophecies as well.
Isaiah
66, chapter 66, verses 1 through 24.
Thank you.
And it says, this is what God said. The heavens is my throne and the earth is my footstool. So what house could you build worthy for me, says Hashem? And what place is worthy for my presence to rest? My hand has made all these things, heaven and earth, and therefore all these things came into being, says Hashem. But even though I am so exalted, to this I will pay attention to he who is poor and of a contrite spirit and trembles at my word. So it goes on, but just to give you an idea of how it starts, that's Isaiah 66. And there's some mega prophecy in there too. So maybe we'll go over that on Sunday as well.
So let me, I'm looking for it. I'm gonna mark it.
Mm-hmm. And
I'm so sorry.
you have up until it gets dark tomorrow to call me back if you misplace or questioning or anything. You need help with anything, you call me. Okay? But there are many various chapters that talk about idolatry. I might do a little research myself, either tonight or tomorrow morning, to share more of that with you.
Okay. I'm going to. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's very important, for sure.
Yeah, I know, for sure. Anyway, we've been an hour and a half, and Thursday nights we try to keep it down to an hour, and we always go over time because there's a lot of Torah, and I love Torah, and you love Torah, and so we don't watch the clock, thank God. But we do need some sleep. So let's see if we get that other class taken care of in the morning tomorrow. Oh, be it the will of Hashem. Yeah, no, by this time I'm knocked out. I don't stop. Yeah, no, because I don't stop all day. I'm like a non-stop. I wake up and go, 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 go. In fact, I have groceries in bags behind me that I have to put away yet. But Baruch Hashem. Yeah, but don't be sorry. This is priority. Hashem and Torah is priority. Everything else can wait. You know? And Shabbos is priority. So I wish you sweet dreams and good night's sleep. And with the help of the Almighty, maybe we'll even get that mini class in tomorrow morning sometime. And then we're back on the road. And
I think that class doesn't want to be, I don't know, something's going on with us.
yeah, right? It's that it needs a home. We have to find a home for it.
You know, it's homeless.
Right? No, and Pirkei Avos is for a time. So Pirkei Avos is going to be, I think I might be taking the Pirkei Avos class Sunday night for that class. We'll see. You know?
Yeah, I think that's good because we already kind of went through that whole book.
And it's a second class on Sunday because we do one in the afternoon. So it's a good possibility. But anyway, we'll confirm everything after Shabbos. Have a wonderful Shabbos. And make sure you get all your laundry and everything done before you go into Shabbos. So you'll be ready for Friday, you know?
Thank you so much.
Good. What do you say? Buenas sueños. Buenas sueños. Zygabench. Let's see. Off and off and off. Where's that? And then that. And YouTubers, thanks for coming in. And this lady wrote me a whole bunch of stuff. I can't read while I'm giving class. Let's see. I do hope someday soon that she'll start, or he'll start. I'm not sure if the name is Wesley. I don't know if that's a man or a woman's name, but I do pray that that they begin to search for truth and stop following idolatry. It'll improve their life tremendously. Okay. Anyway, wishing you all a wonderful Shabbos, and we'll be back on Sunday, Eastern Time, noon. My husband's class is recorded as well on Sunday. So we'll see you at noon Eastern Standard Time, God willing. Shalom, shalom.